stay calm, think smart. That single decision can change the way you face every difficult moment in life. We live in a world that never stops testing us. Stress at work, misunderstandings at home, unexpected problems that shake our confidence. It all comes fast, and most people lose control because they react before they think. The truth is, it's not the situation itself that destroys peace of mind, it's the way we handle it. This book, Stay Calm, Think Smart, The Art of Critical Thinking in Difficult Situations, is about giving you the tools to handle those moments differently. Here, you will learn how to pause when panic rises, how to question the quick assumptions that often mislead you, and how to use clear reasoning when emotions are pulling you in the wrong direction. Every chapter is built to help you stay steady, think clearly, and act wisely. If you want more calm and control in daily life, your journey starts here. Chapter 1. Train your brain to stay calm during sudden stress. When life presses hard and sudden stress shows up, most people feel their heart race, their thoughts scatter, and their decisions become cloudy. In those moments, the difference between falling apart and staying strong often comes down to training the mind. You see, calm is not just something that happens when things are easy. Calm is built, calm is trained, and calm is a choice you practice long before the storm arrives. And if you want to think smart when it matters most, the first step is to train your brain to stay calm during sudden stress. Stress has a way of sneaking in fast. Maybe it's bad news at work. Maybe it's conflict with someone you care about. Maybe it's an unexpected bill that feels overwhelming. Your body reacts immediately. Your chest tightens, your hands sweat, your breathing speeds up, your brain starts searching for danger. It is a natural response, but it doesn't always serve you, because in that moment, your ability to think clearly drops. You say things you don't mean, you rush into decisions you regret, you give in to fear instead of reason. And that is why training calm is one of the most valuable skills a person can ever develop. How do you do it? It begins with awareness. Most people live their lives unaware of how stress changes their behavior. They react automatically, like they're being controlled by something outside of themselves. But once you notice what's happening in your body and in your thoughts, you gain the power to choose differently. The moment you feel your chest tighten, instead of running with the panic, you stop and breathe. You slow the body so the brain can settle. Just one deep breath done with intention can start to bring you back under control. Think about this truth. Stress is energy. That energy can either control you or you can direct it. And the way you direct it is by creating a gap between what happens to you and what you decide to do about it. That gap is everything. If someone yells at you and you yell back instantly, you've lost the gap. If the phone rings with bad news and you panic before you even know the full story, you've lost the gap. But if you pause, if you take that breath, if you let the surge of energy pass through without reacting, you regain control. That gap is where calm lives. That gap is where smart thinking starts. The next step is preparation. Calm does not show up only because you want it to. It shows up because you practice it. Think about athletes who train every day. When the big game comes, they don't rely on luck. They rely on training. The same is true with your mind. You must rehearse calm when life is ordinary, so it will be ready when life is intense. That means practicing stillness each morning. It means learning how to sit quietly, breathe deeply, and bring your focus back to what matters. It means developing routines that steady your mind, so sudden stress doesn't take over. One of the most powerful tools is the practice of deliberate breathing. When stress hits, your body naturally moves into shallow, fast breaths. That fuels panic. But when you slow down your breath, you signal to your brain that you are safe, and the brain responds by calming down. A simple exercise is 4 seconds in, hold for 4, and then release slowly for 4. Do this for a few cycles and you'll feel the change. Your heart rate drops, your body loosens, and now your mind is ready to think. Another tool is mental rehearsal. Picture yourself in a stressful situation. Maybe it's a conflict at work. Maybe it's standing in front of an audience. Maybe it's getting that unexpected bad news. Instead of imagining yourself breaking down, practice seeing yourself calm, grounded, and in control. The brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined practice. So the more you rehearse calm, the more natural it will feel when stress shows up in real life. Now let's talk about perspective. Stress feels bigger than it is because we believe we have no control. But most stress is not about what actually happens. It's about the story we tell ourselves. If someone criticizes you, you can tell yourself they're attacking your worth. That story will create stress. Or you can tell yourself they're just sharing their opinion, and you have the choice whether to accept it. That story reduces stress. The facts are the same, but the meaning changes everything. Train your brain to separate what happened from the story you attach to it. This is the art of thinking smart. And here's another truth. Most of the stress people carry is about the future, not the present. They imagine what could go wrong. They build worst-case scenarios. They live in what might happen instead of what is happening. But the brain cannot think clearly about solutions if it is lost in imagined disasters. To stay calm, pull yourself back to the present. Ask, what is happening right now? What can I do right now? This grounds your mind and frees it from drowning in fear. Self-talk plays a massive role. When sudden stress hits, what do you say to yourself? Most people say, "This is too much. I can't handle this." That thought creates panic. Instead, train your inner voice to say, "I can handle this. I will take it one step at a time." Simple, direct, empowering language shifts how you feel, and how you feel shapes how you act. Speak strength to yourself, and you'll build strength in the moment. Another key piece is discipline. Train your daily life to handle small stresses calmly. If you get irritated in traffic, practice patience. If you feel frustrated with small inconveniences, practice letting them go. Every time you choose calm in the little things, you are building the muscle to choose calm in the big things. Your brain learns patterns. If the pattern is panic, panic becomes automatic. If the pattern is calm, calm becomes automatic. This is how you prepare your mind for the unexpected. Relationships matter here too. The people you spend time with influence your calm. If you surround yourself with constant negativity and panic-driven talk, it will feed your stress. But if you spend time with people who handle pressure with composure, who face challenges with thoughtfulness, you absorb their energy and learn their example. Choose carefully who you let shape your emotional state. Now think about your environment. When stress hits, what is around you? If your surroundings are full of noise, clutter, and chaos, it amplifies the stress. But if you build an environment of order, calmness, and clarity, it supports your ability to think smart. Something as simple as keeping your space organized, reducing noise, and creating a corner where you can step aside and breathe can make a powerful difference. And then there is health. A tired body cannot handle stress as well as a strong one. Poor sleep, poor diet, and lack of movement make you more vulnerable to panic. When stress arrives, your brain will be weaker if your body is weak. But when you nourish yourself, when you exercise, when you rest properly, you build resilience. A strong body supports a strong mind. The truth is, life will never stop bringing sudden stress. You cannot control every event, but you can control your response. And when you train your brain to stay calm, you give yourself the power to choose smart actions instead of destructive reactions. That is the difference between living at the mercy of circumstances and living with strength and purpose. Imagine this. You get news that shakes you. Instead of panic, you breathe. You slow your body. You check the facts. You separate what really matters from what doesn't. You choose your response with clarity. And when others around you fall apart, you remain steady. They look to you for direction. They trust your judgment. You become the anchor in the storm. That is what training calm does. It not only changes your life, it impacts everyone connected to you. And when you build this habit, something extraordinary happens. You begin to trust yourself. You know that no matter what comes, you can handle it. That confidence reduces your fear of the future. You no longer avoid challenges. You no longer shrink from difficulties. You face them head-on, knowing your mind is trained to stay calm and think smart. The road to this kind of strength is built step by step. Start with awareness. Notice your reactions. Add in the practice of deliberate breathing. Rehearse calm in your mind. Change the story you tell yourself. Live in the present moment. Speak strength to yourself. Train daily discipline in small stresses. Build a strong body and choose a supportive environment. These practices, done consistently, transform your brain into a calm and capable guide. This is not theory. This is practical psychology lived out daily. People who master this live more peacefully, think more clearly, and make better decisions. They avoid unnecessary conflict. They handle crisis with leadership. They build stronger relationships, and they create lives filled with confidence instead of fear. So, train your brain today. Not tomorrow, not when life gets easier, but now. Because stress is not going away, but your ability to handle it can grow every day. Stay calm, think smart. Make critical thinking your ally in difficult situations. This is how you step into strength, into clarity, and into the kind of life where you are no longer controlled by stress, but where you control your response and shape your destiny. Chapter 2. Strengthen logical thinking when emotions try to take over. When emotions run high, the mind often loses balance. Decisions are rushed, words are sharp, and actions come from impulse instead of reason. In those moments, your ability to think logically is tested more than ever. The challenge is not in having emotions, because emotions are natural and necessary. The challenge is in preventing emotions from controlling the way you think. To strengthen logical thinking when emotions try to take over, you must develop mental habits that keep you steady and focused, no matter how intense the situation feels. The first truth is that emotions are fast, while logic is slow. Anger can rise in seconds. Fear can take over in an instant. But clear reasoning requires a pause. It requires patience. If you do not train yourself to slow down your immediate reaction, emotions will run the show. And when emotions dominate the mind, small problems become large arguments, and small fears become overwhelming disasters. By practicing the art of slowing down, you give logic the time it needs to catch up. This begins with recognizing triggers. Every person has situations that ignite strong emotional responses. For some, it is criticism. For others, it is rejection. For many, it is the feeling of being ignored or disrespected. If you can identify the moments that stir your strongest emotions, you will already be better prepared to meet them with logic instead of letting them control you. Awareness is always the first step to change. Once you are aware, the next step is interruption. When you feel the wave of emotion rising, you need a simple action that interrupts the automatic response. That could be taking one deliberate breath. It could be repeating a short phrase to yourself like "I am in control." It could be taking a step back physically to create space between you and the situation. This small interruption creates a gap, and in that gap, logic can step in. Logical thinking thrives on clarity, and clarity comes from questions. When emotions push you to act, Ask yourself very simple questions. What exactly happened? What is the fact here? What is my interpretation of it? What are 3 possible ways I can respond? These questions pull your brain from emotional impulse into reasoning mode. By shifting from reaction to inquiry, you change the direction of your thoughts. Another powerful habit is labeling emotions. Instead of saying, "I am angry," you say, "I feel anger right now." Instead of saying, "I am afraid," you say, "I feel fear right now." This small shift separates your identity from the emotion. You are not anger itself, you are a person experiencing anger. This separation gives your logical mind space to work. Once you see the emotion as a temporary state, not a permanent truth, you can guide yourself into clearer thinking. Training logic under pressure also requires practice when life is calm. If you only try to think logically when emotions are already high, it will be much harder. But if you build daily habits that strengthen reasoning, it will become natural. One practice is problem breakdown. Take a challenge and write it out in simple steps. What is the problem? What are the causes? What are the possible solutions? By making this a daily exercise, you teach your brain to think systematically. Then, when stress hits your mind, already knows the pathway of logic. Another habit is evidence gathering. Emotions love assumptions. Logic demands facts. When you feel upset, practice asking, what proof do I actually have? If you feel someone disrespected, you ask, what did they actually do? Could there be another explanation? Many conflicts grow not from reality, but from assumptions. Training yourself to look for evidence before drawing conclusions builds a logical shield against emotional distortion. Balanced reasoning also requires perspective. Emotions often magnify the present moment until it feels like everything depends on it. But logic asks, how much will this matter tomorrow, next month, next year? That question reduces the emotional weight of the situation and allows clearer judgment. By placing the problem in a wider frame, you weaken the hold emotions have on you. Self-talk plays a critical role here as well. When emotions rise, the inner voice often says things like, "This is unbearable," "I cannot take this," or "They always do this to me." These statements feed emotional intensity. Replace them with logical reminders. Say to yourself, "This is temporary. I will look at the facts first. I choose to respond with clarity." These simple affirmations recenter the mind on rational control instead of emotional chaos. Strengthening logical thinking is also about practicing humility. Emotions make you believe you are always right. Logic teaches you to step back and consider other viewpoints. In heated situations, practice asking, how might the other person see this? What could I be missing? What is the bigger picture here? This willingness to question yourself not only calms emotions, but also sharpens reasoning. Physical state influences mental state. When you are tired, hungry, or overstimulated, emotions are more likely to dominate your thinking. That is why caring for your body is part of strengthening logical thinking. Sleep restores clarity. Healthy food stabilizes mood. Exercise releases tension. A strong body supports a strong mind, especially in moments of emotional strain. Building this skill also requires reflection. After a stressful event, look back and ask, how did I respond? What was driven by emotion? What was driven by logic? What could I do differently next time? Reflection turns every mistake into a lesson. Over time, you notice patterns and build strategies that prepare you for the future. Relationships play their role as well. Being around people who stay calm under pressure helps you absorb their example. If your circle reacts to everything with emotional chaos, you will pick up those patterns. But if your circle practices measured, thoughtful responses, you will learn from them. Choose people who strengthen your logic instead of feeding your impulse. A practical exercise to develop logical control is the pause and write method. When you feel emotions rising, instead of speaking or acting immediately, write down what you are feeling and what you want to do. Then look at what you wrote and ask, is this response logical? Does it help or hurt the situation? This process slows the reaction and gives space for reasoning to guide your choice. One of the hardest but most rewarding habits is delaying judgment. Emotions want immediate conclusions. Logic requires time. Practice telling yourself, I will decide after I gather more information. This small delay often prevents mistakes and leads to better choices. It also teaches your emotions that they do not control the timeline of your decisions. Consider how many conflicts in life could be avoided if people paused and thought logically instead of reacting emotionally. Arguments that escalate into broken relationships. Decisions made in anger that damage careers. Words spoken in fear that close opportunities. Every one of these could have been softened by a moment of logic over emotion. The deeper reward of this training is trust in yourself. When you know you can remain logical, even when emotions are strong, you develop confidence in your own judgment. You no longer fear difficult conversations or unexpected problems because you trust your ability to respond with reason. That trust reduces anxiety and builds resilience. This practice does not mean ignoring emotions. Emotions are signals, they carry valuable information. Anger can point to injustice. Fear can warn of danger. Sadness can show what you value. But emotions are not meant to drive the car, they are meant to sit beside logic and inform it. Strengthening logical thinking is about giving emotions a voice but not the final say. So how do you make this real in daily life? Begin by noticing your triggers. Interrupt your automatic reactions with a pause. Ask simple grounding questions. Label your emotions to create distance. Practice breaking down problems into clear steps. Train evidence-based thinking by seeking facts. Widen your perspective by asking how much it will matter in time. Replace destructive self-talk with empowering logic. Care for your body to support your mind. Reflect on your experiences to learn from them. Surround yourself with people who model calm. Delay judgment until you have clarity. Do this consistently and you will see the change. You will handle disagreements with maturity. You will solve problems without panic. You will lead yourself and others with strength. And you will walk through life with the confidence of knowing that no matter how strong emotions become, they will not control your thinking. When emotions try to take over, you will have the tools to stay steady. Your mind will become trained not just to survive stress but to turn it into growth. And that ability to choose logic over impulse, to choose clarity over chaos, will serve you in every area of life. It will shape your relationships, your career, your decisions, and your future. This is the power of strengthening logical thinking when emotions try to take over. Chapter 3. Identify mental biases that distort judgment in hard times. In times the mind does not always see clearly. Stress, pressure, and fear can cloud vision and distort judgment. What makes it worse is that the brain comes with built-in shortcuts called mental biases. These shortcuts are meant to help us make quick decisions, but under pressure, they often lead us in the wrong direction. If you want to think smart during difficult moments, you must first recognize the biases that sneak in and quietly control your choices. When you identify these biases, you take back control of your reasoning and your decisions become stronger and wiser. One of the most common distortions is confirmation bias. This is when you only notice information that supports what you already believe and ignore everything else. In hard times, this can be dangerous. If you believe you cannot succeed, you will only notice evidence that proves you right while ignoring signs of opportunity. If you think someone is against you, you will interpret every word and action as proof of hostility, even when that is not the case. The way to fight confirmation bias is to deliberately search for the opposite. Ask yourself, what evidence challenges my belief? What could I be missing? By forcing your mind to consider another angle, you open space for balanced judgment. Another bias that distorts thinking in hard times is catastrophizing. This is when you exaggerate the negative and expect the worst possible outcome. The car is late, so you assume the whole plan will fail. You make one mistake and believe your entire career is ruined. This bias fuels anxiety and weakens rational thinking. The way out is perspective. Ask yourself, what is the most likely outcome? Not the worst possible outcome. Consider the realistic range of results. Most of the time, the disaster you imagine is far less likely than you think. Training yourself to ask for the realistic probability brings your judgment back to level ground. Emotional bias is another trap. When life gets hard, your feelings can shape what you see as truth. If you are angry, you may judge too harshly. If you are afraid, you may underestimate your strength. If you are sad, you may overlook opportunities for change. Emotions are powerful, but they are not reliable measures of reality. The way to reduce emotional bias is to separate what you feel from what is factual. Write down the facts of the situation in plain words, then compare them to your feelings. Often you will see a gap. This gap shows you where emotions are trying to distort your judgment. There is also availability bias. In difficult times, the brain tends to grab the first piece of information that comes to mind and treat it as the whole picture. If the last thing you heard was a negative story, you assume the same will happen to you. If the last memory you recall is failure, you believe failure is certain again. The brain picks what is easiest to recall, not what is most accurate. To avoid this bias, you must broaden the view. Actively gather more examples, more data, more perspectives. Do not let the first thing that comes to mind decide your path. Hindsight bias is another mental trap. When looking back after a tough situation, you may convince yourself you knew the outcome all along. This creates overconfidence and blinds you from learning. You say, I knew this would happen, but the truth is, you did not. This illusion blocks growth because you stop examining what you could have done differently. To fight hindsight bias, practice humility. Admit what you did not know. Accept that uncertainty is always part of life. By being honest about what you truly understood, at the time you stay open to lessons that strengthen future judgment. Anchoring bias is another distortion. In stressful times, the brain tends to lock onto the first piece of information it receives and treat it as the reference point for all decisions. If the first opinion you hear is negative, you may carry that negativity into all future thoughts. If the first number someone gives you in a negotiation, you unconsciously anchor around it. To avoid this trap, train yourself to question the starting point. Ask, is this number fair? Is this assumption correct? Gather alternative starting points before making any conclusion. The next bias to understand is groupthink. When people around you are also stressed, you may feel pressure to agree with them even if their judgment is wrong. The need for acceptance overrides logical evaluation. In difficult situations, this can lead entire groups into poor decisions. The cure for groupthink is courage. Practice speaking your mind even if it is different. Ask questions that open the conversation instead of closing it. Strong thinking sometimes means standing alone until clarity is seen. Another subtle bias is self-serving bias. In times of struggle, people tend to take credit for success, but blame outside forces for failure. This prevents honest evaluation of mistakes. If you only see yourself as the hero when things go right and the victim when things go wrong, you will never grow. The way to fight this bias is radical responsibility. Admit where your own choices contributed to the outcome. Give yourself credit, but also accept your part in the failure. This honesty clears the path for true improvement. Negativity bias is especially strong in difficult moments. The brain pays more attention to bad news than good news. You may receive 9 compliments and 1 criticism, but the criticism is what stays in your mind. During hard times, this bias magnifies the pain and makes the situation look worse than it is. To balance negativity bias, practice gratitude. Each day in tough times, list what is still working, what is still good, what is still possible. This retrains the brain to see a fuller picture instead of being consumed by negatives. Survivorship bias is another distortion. People often pay attention only to those who succeed and ignore those who fail. In hard times, this can lead to unrealistic expectations. You may hear stories of someone who bounced back quickly and assume you should do the same, forgetting the countless others who took longer or struggled differently. To correct this bias, look at the complete picture. Study both successes and failures. Learn from all outcomes, not just the ones that are celebrated. Status quo bias also influences judgment. In difficult times, you may resist change simply because it feels safer to stick with what you know, even if it is not working. The fear of the unknown makes you choose familiarity over improvement. To fight this bias, you must challenge the comfort zone. Ask yourself, is this choice based on evidence or just habit? Am I avoiding change because it is truly bad or simply because it feels unfamiliar? By questioning the pull of the status quo, you open yourself to better options. Recency bias is another trap. The brain gives more weight to the most recent events than to the larger history. If the last week was hard, you believe the future will always be hard, even if the months before were successful. This distortion shrinks perspective and feeds despair. To overcome recency bias, review the longer timeline. Look at patterns, not just recent moments. Remind yourself that one chapter does not define the entire story. There is also overconfidence bias. In hard times, some people react by convincing themselves they know more than they do. This makes them dismiss valuable advice and ignore warning signs. The danger is that overconfidence often leads to bigger mistakes. To balance this bias, practice humility and curiosity. Admit what you do not know. Ask for guidance. Double-check your assumptions. True strength comes not from acting like you know everything, but from seeking wisdom beyond yourself. Identifying these biases requires self-observation. Each time you face a tough situation, pause and ask, which bias might be influencing me right now? Am I only looking for evidence that agrees with me? Am I exaggerating the negative? Am I letting the group decide for me? This practice of questioning trains your brain to spot distortions before they guide your choices. Another strategy is writing. When emotions are high and judgment feels clouded, write down your reasoning. Put on paper the problem, the evidence, the possible solutions, and the choice you want to make. When you see your thoughts in writing, biases become easier to spot. You may notice you are ignoring information. You may notice you are assuming too much. You may notice you are anchored to the first detail you heard. Writing slows down thinking and exposes the bias hiding in it. Learning about biases is not about eliminating them completely. They are part of human psychology. The goal is awareness and management. The more you practice identifying them, the less power they have over you. Over time, you will catch yourself in the act. You will say, I am falling into confirmation bias, or I am exaggerating the negative, and in that moment you regain freedom of thought. This practice builds resilience. Hard times will always come, but if your judgment remains clear, you will make better decisions and create better outcomes. When others panic, you will remain steady. When others exaggerate, you will remain realistic. When others fall into distortion, you will lead with clarity. That is the strength of identifying and managing biases, and the deeper benefit is growth. Every time you catch a bias, you not only protect yourself from poor judgment, you also learn something about how your mind works. That self-knowledge makes you wiser. It makes you less reactive. It builds trust in your ability to think with balance even when circumstances are tough. So begin now. Observe your thoughts. Watch for distortions.
Ask questions that challenge your assumptions. Seek evidence, not just comfort. Balance emotions with facts. Train gratitude to balance negativity. Review longer timelines to fight recency. Accept responsibility to counter self-serving bias. Surround yourself with honest voices to break groupthink. The more you practice, the stronger your logical judgment becomes. In the end, hard times reveal the difference between people who are ruled by hidden biases and those who rise above them. If you can identify the biases that distort your mind, you take back power over your decisions. You move from confusion to clarity, from fear to reason, from distortion to truth. And that ability to see clearly in the middle of struggle is one of the greatest strengths you can ever build.
Chapter 4. Practice evaluating evidence before reacting to any problem. Most people get into trouble not because the problem itself is too large, but because they rush into action before understanding what is actually going on. The human mind is quick to judge and quick to react. When something unexpected happens, we often move straight to defending ourselves or fixing the situation without ever checking the facts. This is where mistakes are made. Acting without evidence can turn a small issue into a crisis. If you want to strengthen your ability to think smart in difficult moments, you must practice the discipline of evaluating evidence before reacting to any problem. The habit of pausing to evaluate is not natural. It requires training. The brain is wired for speed, especially under stress. But speed is not the same as accuracy. If you have ever snapped at someone and later realized you misunderstood them, you know how costly a fast reaction can be. Evaluating evidence means taking a step back and asking, what do I really know, what is only assumption, and what proof do I actually have? It means slowing down just enough to give yourself a chance to separate reality from interpretation. When you face a problem, the first step is to define it clearly. Most people never stop to do this. They confuse the surface symptom with the real issue. A coworker raises their voice and you think the problem is disrespect, but the real problem might be miscommunication. A bill comes unexpectedly and you think the problem is money, but the deeper issue may be lack of planning. By writing down exactly what the problem is, you strip away some of the confusion. You begin the process of working with facts instead of reactions. Once the problem is defined, the next step is gathering information. Evidence comes from data, not from assumption. If the car makes a strange sound, you do not assume it is broken beyond repair. You check the engine. You listen carefully. You maybe consult someone with knowledge. In life, problems are the same. Do not treat every problem like an emergency until you have the facts. Ask yourself, what details can I observe? What can I measure? What can I verify? Evidence-based thinking requires this habit of checking before deciding. Another part of evaluating evidence is looking for multiple sources. One perspective is rarely enough. If you only listen to one person, you may only hear their interpretation. If you only rely on one piece of data, you may miss the bigger picture. Wise thinkers gather evidence from different angles. If a project fails at work, ask different team members what happened. If you feel tension in a relationship, ask directly for the other person's perspective instead of assuming. Multiple sources give balance. They protect you from being misled by a single view. Ask yourself, what exactly happened? What are the facts? I can prove. What is opinion? What is assumption? What is missing from the picture? Asking these questions breaks the automatic reaction cycle. It forces the brain to move from emotion to reason. A person who builds this habit gains a reputation for fairness and clarity because they do not jump to conclusions. They take time to understand before they respond. Sometimes the hardest part of evaluating evidence is resisting the urge to fill in the gap. When information is incomplete, the mind wants to complete the story, even if the story is not true. This leads to overreaction.
The practice of patience is critical here. Admit when you do not yet know enough. Hold back judgment until the evidence is sufficient. It takes strength to live with uncertainty, but that strength pays off when your decision is finally grounded in solid facts. Evidence evaluation also requires separating feelings from facts. Feelings are important, but they are not evidence. Anger does not mean someone wronged you. Fear does not mean danger is certain. Excitement does not mean the opportunity is good. Feelings can inform you, but they cannot decide for you. The practice is to write down both separately. On one side, write the facts you can verify. On the other side, write what you feel. Then compare. This shows you clearly where emotion is trying to influence judgment without evidence. Another important step is testing your assumptions. Assumptions feel like truth, but they are not. If someone does not return your call, you might assume they are ignoring you, but the evidence may simply be that they were busy. If a task takes longer than expected, you may assume you are failing, but the evidence may be that the task was more complex than planned. Always challenge assumptions by asking what else could explain this. By testing assumptions against alternative explanations, you prevent false conclusions. Practicing evidence-based thinking also means valuing accuracy over speed. In many areas of life, society rewards fast answers, but a fast wrong answer is still wrong. Slow, careful reasoning may take more time, but it creates lasting solutions. When others are rushing to respond, you can stand out by being the one who gathers information first. Over time, people will respect your judgment because your decisions prove reliable. Evaluating evidence is not only about avoiding mistakes, it also builds trust. When you show others that you take the time to understand before reacting, they feel respected. In conflicts, this can diffuse tension. In teamwork, it can inspire cooperation. In leadership, it builds credibility. People follow those who demonstrate fairness and clarity because they know decisions are not based on impulse but on truth. You can strengthen this skill with simple daily practices. If you hear news, ask yourself, what is the source? If you feel upset, ask what evidence supports this feeling. If you face a decision, ask what information do I still need before choosing. Build the reflex of checking the evidence, no matter how small the situation. This daily training prepares you for the larger challenges when the stakes are higher. An effective exercise is evidence journaling. At the end of each day, write down one situation where you reacted and ask, what evidence did I use? What did I ignore? What assumptions did I make? Over time, you will see patterns. You will notice where you tend to jump too quickly. You will learn how often feelings try to act as fact. This reflection sharpens your awareness and strengthens future responses. Technology can be a tool in this process too. With access to so much information, it is easy to assume the first thing you read online is accurate, but evidence evaluation demands cross-checking. Look for reliable sources. Compare multiple reports. Ask if the information comes from a credible expert or just opinion. Training yourself to be skeptical of the first answer protects you from misinformation and strengthens critical thinking. A common mistake is reacting to rumors. In workplace, families and communities, rumors can spread quickly and cause unnecessary conflict. Practicing evidence evaluation means refusing to react until the truth is verified. This requires discipline, but it prevents wasted energy and broken relationships. Instead of passing on what you heard, say, I will wait until I see the facts. This single habit can protect you from endless trouble. Another practice is slowing down language. When you speak in absolutes like always, never, everyone, no one, you are usually ignoring evidence. These words come from emotion, not fact. Instead, use precise language. Say, this happened once, or this is often the case. Precision in words forces precision in thinking. It reduces exaggeration and aligns your thoughts more closely with reality. Evaluating evidence is also about timing. Sometimes waiting just a little longer brings the information you need. Acting too soon can lock you into a poor decision. The patience to wait for clarity is not weakness, it is strength. Those who react instantly often regret. Those who wait for evidence build wisdom. The practice of evidence evaluation extends beyond personal life. It applies to society as well. Leaders who fail to evaluate evidence lead nations into conflict. Businesses that ignore evidence collapse under poor strategies. Families that react without evidence break trust. The discipline of looking at facts before acting protects not only individuals but entire communities. There is also an important link between evidence and accountability. When you base your decisions on evidence, you can explain them clearly. You can say, here is why I chose this path, here is the proof that guided me. This transparency builds respect. Without evidence, decisions appear random or selfish. With evidence, they appear strong and fair. The long-term benefit of this practice is confidence. When you know your choices are based on solid information, you feel secure in them. Even if the outcome is not perfect, you know you did the best with the facts available. This reduces regret. Regret comes most often from acting too quickly, without checking the evidence. By evaluating first, you protect yourself from unnecessary guilt and doubt. To master this skill, start small. Pause before responding to a text that upsets you. Gather details before assuming the worst about a situation. Ask questions before giving an opinion. With practice, it becomes second nature. Soon you will find yourself automatically slowing down, asking for facts and thinking through options before reacting. This way of living brings peace. Problems lose some of their power when you look at them through the lens of evidence. Fear fades when you know the facts. Anger softens when you realize the story was incomplete. Confidence grows when your actions are grounded in truth. This is the real strength of practicing evidence evaluation before reacting to any problem. In every challenge there is the quick reaction, and there is the measured response. The quick reaction often makes things worse. The measured response, guided by evidence, builds solutions and stability. The choice is yours in each moment. Train yourself to choose evidence over impulse. Build the habit of checking the facts before moving forward. Live this discipline daily, and you will notice your problems become clearer. Your decisions become stronger, and your life becomes more steady. The world is full of people reacting without thinking, but those who practice evaluating evidence stand apart. They become the voices of reason when others are confused. They become the steady hands in times of crisis. They become the trusted leaders families, co-workers, and friends turn to. This is the reward for building this skill. It is not just about solving problems. It is about becoming the kind of person others can rely on when life becomes difficult.
Chapter 5. Develop clear reasoning by asking focused, powerful questions daily. Clarity does not arrive by accident. It is created by the questions you ask yourself every single day. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your thinking, and the quality of your thinking shapes the quality of your life. Many people live on autopilot, repeating the same habits and accepting the same answers they have always had. They wonder why they feel stuck or confused, yet they never stop to ask the right questions that open doors to clearer reasoning and better decisions. If you want to develop strong, clear reasoning, you must train yourself to ask focused, powerful questions daily until it becomes a way of life. The human brain is built to respond to questions. When you ask a question, your mind starts searching for an answer, whether you realize it or not. If you ask weak questions, you will receive weak answers. If you ask questions that are vague, your thinking will stay cloudy. But if you ask sharp, precise questions, your mind will dig deeper, uncover facts, and bring forward insights that might otherwise stay hidden. Asking the right question is like turning on a light in a dark room. The space was always there, but now you can see clearly where to go.
Start with questions about facts. Many situations become confusing because people do not separate facts from assumptions. A simple daily habit is to ask, what do I know for sure? What details can be proven? What part is just my interpretation? These questions discipline your mind to filter reality from story. By making this a practice, you cut through noise and focus on evidence instead of emotion. Clear reasoning always begins with understanding what is real. Next come questions about purpose. Every day you are faced with choices and distractions. If you do not ask why you are doing something, you may spend your time on things that do not matter. Powerful questions include, what is my main priority today? What outcome do I want from this decision? What is the real goal here? These questions sharpen your focus and align your actions with what matters most. Without them, you risk reacting to whatever demands your attention, instead of guiding your life with intention. Questions about consequences strengthen your reasoning even further. When you face a decision, do not ask only what feels good right now. Ask, what will this choice lead to tomorrow? How will this affect me in a year? What impact will this have on the people around me? These questions stretch your vision beyond the present moment. They prevent short-term impulses from creating long-term problems. People who train themselves to ask about consequences develop wisdom because they see further than those who only react to the moment. There are also questions about alternatives. One of the greatest weaknesses in thinking is believing there is only one option. When problems arise, the mind often locks onto the first solution and ignores the rest. To fight this limitation, ask, what other options do I have? What different approaches could I try? What have I not considered yet? By training your brain to search for alternatives, you avoid tunnel vision and discover paths that others miss. Questions about learning are equally powerful. Every mistake, every challenge, every failure carries a lesson, but only if you ask. When something does not go as planned, ask, what can I learn from this? What could I do differently next time? What skill must I build to grow stronger? These questions turn setbacks into training and transform frustration into progress. Without them, difficulties become wasted pain instead of valuable lessons. Self-awareness also grows through the questions you ask yourself about your own motives and emotions. Daily reflection can include asking, why am I feeling this way? What triggered my reaction? What belief is driving my response? These questions pull hidden patterns into the light. They show you where emotions are influencing judgment and where you may be repeating unhelpful habits. With this awareness, you can choose better responses instead of being controlled by automatic reaction. Before judging someone, ask, what might they be going through? What are they really trying to say? What need are they expressing beneath their words? These questions build empathy and reduce conflict. They allow you to see beyond the surface and connect at a deeper level. Clear reasoning is not just about solving problems. It is also about understanding people more accurately. Decision-making is sharpened by questions that test logic. When faced with a choice, ask, what evidence supports this decision? What evidence challenges it? What assumptions am I making? These questions discipline your reasoning and prevent bias from sneaking in. They force you to slow down and analyze instead of rushing with impulse. Over time, your decisions become more balanced and reliable because they are guided by clear thought rather than blind reaction. Another category of powerful questions revolves around improvement. Each day, ask, what can I do to be just a little better today? What small step will move me forward? What habit can I strengthen right now? These questions focus the mind on progress rather than perfection. They make growth consistent and manageable. Over weeks and months, the small improvements compound into major transformation. To build this skill, you must make questioning a daily practice, not an occasional exercise. That means starting your morning by asking, what is the most important thing I can do today? It means ending your night with the question, what did I learn from today? It means pausing before reacting to a challenge and asking what is really happening here. What is the smartest response I can choose? The more you practice, the more automatic it becomes, until questions guide your thinking naturally throughout the day. Writing down your questions multiplies their power. When you put questions on paper, they become clearer and more focused. You can see them in front of you instead of letting them swirl vaguely in your mind. A journal filled with powerful questions becomes a map of your growth. You can look back and see how your thinking evolved over time, how your reasoning sharpened and how your clarity grew stronger. It is important to remember that not all questions are created equal. Weak questions like "Why does this always happen to me?" or "Why am I so unlucky?" keep you stuck. They feed negativity and make you a victim. Strong questions like "What can I do differently? How can I use this challenge? How can I grow through this?" give you power. They shift your focus from blame to responsibility and from helplessness to possibility. Choosing the right kind of questions changes the direction of your entire life. When you ask questions daily, you also train humility. You admit that you do not have all the answers and that there is more to learn. This openness keeps your mind flexible. People who stop asking questions stop growing. They believe they already know enough and their reasoning becomes rigid. But those who keep asking expand their perspective every day. They discover insights others overlook. They see possibilities others ignore. There is a simple exercise you can use to train this habit. At the end of each day, write down 5 questions about the day you just lived. What went well? What did not go well? What did I learn? What could I improve? What will I focus on tomorrow? These 5 questions, if practiced consistently, will sharpen your reasoning more than any book or seminar, because they make you an active participant in your own growth. In times of stress, questions become even more critical. When emotions rise and confusion grows, the natural impulse is to react. But if you have trained yourself to pause and ask what is really happening, what evidence do I have? What options are available? You regain control of your mind. Instead of letting stress drive you into rash choices, you bring logic back into the driver's seat. Questions create space, and in that space, clear reasoning can operate. Asking focused questions is also a way to filter information in a world overloaded with data. Every day you are bombarded with news, opinions, and distractions. Without the skill of questioning, you can easily get lost. But by asking, is this information useful? Is it true? Is it relevant to my goals? You protect your attention and energy. You give priority only to what matters and dismiss the rest. Over time, the habit of daily questioning reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who thinks carefully, who does not rush into conclusions, who chooses with intention. People notice the steadiness in your reasoning. They begin to trust your perspective. They look to you for guidance because they know your thinking is grounded in clarity. This reputation is not built overnight. It is built day by day through the practice of asking powerful questions. The deepest reward of this practice is confidence. When you train yourself to ask questions daily, you trust your mind more. You know you will not be misled by emotion or overwhelmed by confusion. You have a system that leads you to clarity again and again. That trust reduces fear. It allows you to face challenges, knowing you will find your way through them with reason instead of panic. The truth is, life will always present problems. Some will be small and some will feel overwhelming. But if you train your brain to pause and ask the right questions, you will always have a path to clarity. The practice is simple, but it requires discipline. Each day, commit to asking questions that bring truth to light. Over time, you will notice your reasoning grow sharper, your decisions grow stronger, and your life move in the direction of clarity and purpose. In every moment, the choice is yours. You can accept the first thought that comes to mind, or you can challenge it with a focused question. You can live with vague reasoning, or you can sharpen your mind daily until it cuts through confusion with ease. This is the difference between drifting aimlessly and living with clarity. Strong reasoning is not a gift, it is a practice, and that practice begins and grows with the questions you ask every single day.
Chapter 6. Control Inner Panic by grounding yourself in present reality. When panic rises inside, it feels like the world is closing in. Your breathing becomes shallow, your chest feels heavy, and your thoughts race in every direction. The body sends signals of danger even when no real danger is present. This reaction is part of human survival, but in modern life it often works against us. The mind exaggerates problems and the body responds as if survival is on the line. If you want to think smart when situations grow intense, you must learn the discipline of controlling inner panic by grounding yourself in present reality. Panic thrives on imagination. It feeds on what might happen rather than what is happening. A thought about failure quickly turns into a belief that everything will collapse. A worry about health turns into the idea that the worst outcome is certain. Panic multiplies because the brain confuses possibility with reality. Grounding yourself breaks this cycle. It reminds your mind and body that the present moment is manageable and that fear of the future is only a story, not a fact. The first step is awareness. Many people do not even realize they are panicking until it is already overwhelming. By then they have said things they regret or made choices that harm them. Train yourself to notice the early signs of panic. It might be a tight jaw, a racing heart, a restless energy that will not stop. The sooner you recognize it, the sooner you can bring yourself back to the present. Awareness is the doorway to control. Once you notice panic rising, bring attention to your breath. The body and mind are deeply connected. When your breath is rapid, the brain believes danger is close. When your breath is slow and steady, the brain receives the message that you are safe. Practice inhaling deeply through the nose, holding for a brief moment, and releasing slowly through the mouth. Repeat until your body begins to settle. This simple act grounds you because breathing happens only in the present moment. Next, shift your focus to what is real around you. Look at the space you are in. Name objects you can see. Pay attention to sounds you can hear. Notice what you can touch with your hands. Panic pulls you into imagined futures. Grounding pulls you back into current reality. By engaging your senses, you remind yourself that right now, in this very moment, you are safe and capable of handling what is in front of you. Grounding also involves speaking truth to yourself. Panic is fueled by exaggerated stories. The mind says, "I cannot handle this," or "this will never end." These statements are not facts, they are panic-driven thoughts. Replace them with reality-based statements. Say to yourself, "I am safe right now, I can take one step at a time. I do not need to solve everything at once." These truths cut through the lies, panic tells, and bring balance back to your thinking. Another effective practice is breaking down problems into smaller parts. Panic makes challenges look massive and impossible. The brain looks at the entire mountain and feels crushed, but if you ground yourself by asking what is the very next step, the problem becomes manageable. Instead of solving the entire crisis, focus only on what you can do in the next minute or the next hour. Taking small steps grounds you in action, instead of drowning you in fear. The body itself can be a tool for grounding. Physical movement releases tension and signals to the mind that you are in control. Stand tall, plant your feet firmly on the ground, roll your shoulders back and breathe deep. These simple physical adjustments change the messages your body sends to your brain. Panic thrives in a body that is hunched tight and frozen. Strengthen your posture and you strengthen your mind. Writing can also anchor you. When panic clouds your thoughts, grab a pen and paper. Write down exactly what you are worried about. Then write down what is real right now. This exercise separates fact from fear. On one side you will see the imagined future, on the other side you will see the present reality. Often this contrast alone reduces panic because it shows clearly how much of your fear is only projection.
One of the most powerful grounding practices is naming your choices. Panic tells you there are no options. It convinces you that you are trapped. But when you pause and ask, what choices do I actually have, you regain a sense of control. Even in the hardest situations, there is always at least one action you can take. Identifying those choices reminds you that you are not powerless. Grounding in the present also requires letting go of the need to control everything at once. Panic is often fueled by the desire to predict every outcome. The truth is, you cannot control tomorrow. You cannot control what others will do. You can only control this moment. When you focus on what you can do right now, you reclaim peace. The weight of the future becomes lighter because you are no longer trying to live it all at once. A daily habit of mindfulness strengthens this skill. Set aside time each day to sit quietly and observe your thoughts without judgment. When the mind wanders, bring it gently back to the present moment. This simple practice trains you to notice when panic tries to carry you away, and to return your focus to what is real. Over time, your ability to ground yourself becomes stronger and more natural. Environment plays a role too. Panic grows in chaotic surroundings. Clutter, noise, and constant distraction make it harder to stay grounded. Create spaces in your life that support calm. Keep your environment orderly. Reduce unnecessary noise. Have a place where you can retreat for a few minutes of stillness when needed. A grounded environment supports a grounded mind. Nutrition and rest also matter. When the body is exhausted or running on poor fuel, panic rises more easily. Sleep restores balance and energy. Healthy food stabilizes mood. Water keeps the body steady. These simple practices may not seem directly related to panic, but they form the foundation of resilience. A strong body supports a steady mind. It is also valuable to prepare grounding routines for moments you know will be stressful. If you are about to give a presentation, prepare by practicing slow breathing and focusing on what you can control. If you are entering a difficult conversation, remind yourself of truths you can repeat when emotions rise. Having a grounding routine ready allows you to act quickly before panic gains momentum. Support from others can strengthen your grounding as well. Talking to someone you trust can bring perspective and calm. Panic narrows your focus until problems feel larger than they are. A supportive voice reminds you of reality and helps bring balance back. Do not isolate when panic rises. Connection can anchor you just as much as self-discipline. The practice of grounding is not about ignoring problems. It is about seeing them clearly without distortion. Panic exaggerates, but grounding clarifies. Panic weakens, but grounding strengthens. When you train yourself to stay in the present reality, you think smarter, you make better choices, and you protect yourself from unnecessary suffering. Over time, this practice builds confidence. You realize you do not need to fear panic because you know how to manage it. You trust your ability to return to the present no matter how strong the storm inside feels. This trust reduces anxiety about the future. You no longer live in fear of losing control because you know you have tools to bring yourself back. Life will always bring moments of pressure and uncertainty. You cannot stop challenges from coming, but you can control how you meet them. By grounding yourself in present reality, you take away panic's power. You stand steady when others lose balance. You see clearly when others are blinded by fear. You respond wisely instead of reacting wildly. Imagine yourself in the middle of a stressful situation. Your heart starts racing, your thoughts are racing too. But instead of spiraling, you stop. You breathe slowly. You look around and notice the details of the room. You remind yourself, I am safe right now. You write down what you can do next. You take the first step calmly and clearly. The panic loses strength because you have anchored yourself in the present. This is what it means to control in a panic. Each day offers opportunities to practice. When traffic frustrates you, ground yourself by focusing on the fact that you are safe in your car. When work pressures rise, Ground yourself by breaking tasks into one step at a time. When unexpected problems appear, ground yourself by asking what is true right now. What can I handle right now? These small daily practices prepare you for larger storms. The goal is not to never feel panic. Panic is a natural human response. The goal is to notice it quickly and guide yourself back to reality before it controls you. With practice, you shorten the time between panic starting and calm returning. This skill becomes one of your greatest strengths in life. When you live grounded in reality, panic no longer dictates your decisions. You are free to think clearly, act wisely, and move forward with confidence. You are not trapped by imagined disasters. You are not overwhelmed by fear of the future. You live in the present where real power always exists. That is how you control inner panic, by grounding yourself in present reality.
Chapter 7. Sharpen problem solving by breaking down complex, difficult situations. When a situation feels overwhelming, it often is not because the problem is impossible, but because it appears too large and complicated to process. The mind sees the entire weight of the challenge all at once, and panic or paralysis sets in. The truth is, every complex situation can be managed when it is broken into smaller, clearer parts. The art of sharpening problem solving is not in carrying the entire burden at once, but in dividing it into steps that can be handled with precision. When you train yourself to think this way, problems that once felt impossible begin to reveal practical solutions. The first thing to understand is that the brain struggles with overload. When too much information or too many factors are thrown together, the mind becomes foggy. It jumps from one thought to another without structure. This is why complicated situations feel heavier than they are. The key is to bring order. Problem solving becomes sharper when you cut the problem into smaller sections and deal with them one at a time. This clears confusion and replaces chaos with clarity. Begin with defining the core issue. Often people waste energy on symptoms instead of the actual root. For example, if a business is losing customers, the surface issue looks like declining sales, but the deeper cause might be poor service or outdated products. If a relationship feels strained, the surface issue may look like constant arguments, but the deeper cause could be unmet needs or lack of communication. By asking what is the central problem here, you create a target. Without this step, you may pour effort into areas that do not solve anything. Once the core is identified, the next step is to list out the contributing factors. Big challenges are rarely caused by one thing alone. Write down everything connected to the issue. Break it into categories. In the business example, it could be customer service, pricing, marketing, or product design. In personal life, it could be communication habits, expectations, or stress from outside sources. Listing these parts shrinks the size of the problem. You are no longer staring at one giant block of confusion. You are looking at separate, smaller pieces. With the factors identified, prioritize them. Not every part of a problem has equal weight. Some pieces contribute more than others. Ask which of these is most important, which has the biggest influence, which must be addressed first. Prioritization directs your energy where it matters most. Without it, you may spend hours fixing minor details, while the main cause remains untouched. After prioritization, create actionable steps. This is where many people fail. They understand the problem, but they stop at awareness. To sharpen problem solving, you must turn awareness into specific actions. For each key factor, write down what can be done. If communication is weak in a relationship, one step could be setting aside daily time to talk. If customer service is poor in a business, one step could be training staff or setting new standards. The key is to make the steps small, clear, and doable. Breaking problems down this way builds confidence. A massive issue feels unbearable. A single step feels possible. When you complete one step, you gain momentum,
and that momentum carries you forward. Over time, the once overwhelming problem becomes manageable progress. This is not only practical, but also psychological. The brain responds positively to progress. Each small win calms the mind and strengthens motivation. Another important element is questioning assumptions. Complex situations often look harder than they are because of hidden beliefs. You may assume that change is impossible or that a solution must be complicated. But by questioning what you believe, you often discover simpler paths forward. Ask yourself, what am I assuming here? What if the opposite were true? What evidence do I have? These questions break mental walls and open creative possibilities. Creative thinking itself is sharpened by problem breakdown. When you divide a large challenge into smaller parts, you give your mind space to explore multiple angles. Instead of asking, how do I fix everything, you ask, how do I handle this specific part? The brain finds it easier to innovate on smaller issues than on one massive whole. This encourages flexible thinking and expands your solution set. Another method to sharpen problem solving is visualization. Write down the steps of the problem like a flowchart. Start with the main issue at the top, then branch out into causes and possible solutions. Seeing the structure on paper makes the complexity easier to handle. What once felt like a tangle in your mind becomes organized and clear. This not only helps you, but also allows you to explain the problem more effectively to others, if needed. It is also important to gather perspective. When situations are difficult, your own view may be limited. By breaking the problem into parts, you can ask others for feedback on specific sections, instead of overwhelming them with the entire challenge. This makes it easier for others to contribute meaningfully. Different perspectives often reveal blind spots you could not see on your own. Sharpening problem solving also requires patience. Complex situations rarely resolve in one attempt. By breaking the challenge into steps, you accept that progress will come gradually. This mindset prevents frustration and builds resilience. Each completed step is progress, even if the whole solution is not yet complete. Patience gives you the endurance to keep going until the problem is fully resolved. Another principle is flexibility. Sometimes when you break down a problem, you discover that the initial steps do not work as expected. This is not failure, it is feedback. Adjust the plan, reprioritize, create new steps. Problem solving is not about forcing one plan, it is about adapting intelligently until the solution emerges. Flexibility keeps you from getting stuck and keeps your reasoning sharp. Problem solving also improves when you evaluate risks and benefits for each possible step. A complex situation may have several paths forward. Write down the pros and cons of each option. What is the cost? What is the potential gain? What resources will it require? This analysis keeps your thinking balanced and prevents impulsive moves. With practice, this habit becomes natural and sharpens your ability to make decisions, even under pressure. Do not underestimate the role of communication in solving complex problems. When challenges involve others, clarity of communication is essential. Break down the situation into simple explanations. State the facts, the priorities, and the steps clearly. Confusion in communication can make a complex situation worse. Precision and simplicity build cooperation and alignment. Sharpening problem solving also means managing your emotional state. Fear and frustration make problems look bigger. Calmness allows you to see paths clearly. Practice pausing when emotions rise. Step back and ask, what part of the problem am I focusing on right now? This grounds you and prevents emotional reactions from distorting your reasoning. Daily practice strengthens this skill. Instead of waiting for a crisis, practice on smaller challenges. If your schedule feels overwhelming, break it down into priorities and steps. If a task looks complicated, divide it into stages. Each time you do this, you train your brain to approach problems with structure instead of panic. Over time, the skill becomes automatic. Reflection is another tool. After solving a problem, look back and ask, what process worked? What could I improve? What step made the biggest difference? This review sharpens your ability to handle future challenges. Each experience adds to your toolkit of strategies. You become more skilled and more confident with each lesson. This way of thinking also influences how others see you. People trust and respect those who can bring clarity to confusion. When you take a difficult situation and explain it in simple steps, you become a leader. Others look to you not because you have all the answers, but because you know how to break down the questions. This is the mark of sharp problem solving. The ultimate benefit of this practice is empowerment. Complex situations no longer intimidate you. Instead of feeling crushed, you feel prepared. Instead of saying this is impossible, you say, what part can I handle first? That shift changes everything. It transforms fear into action and action into results. Life will always bring problems that appear too big to manage, but the size of the problem is not the true challenge. The challenge is whether you can divide it into parts that can be solved step by step. By practicing this discipline daily, you sharpen your mind, build resilience, and strengthen your ability to navigate any situation. Imagine the difference in your life when you approach every challenge with this mindset. Work becomes more manageable, relationships become clearer, personal goals become reachable. Instead of drowning in the complexity of life, you move steadily through it with confidence. This is what it means to sharpen problem solving by breaking down complex, difficult situations.
Chapter 8. Challenge quick assumptions and replace them with tested facts. One of the greatest traps of the human mind is the tendency to jump to conclusions without stopping to check if those conclusions are actually true. Quick assumptions feel convenient because they save time and give us a sense of certainty, but in reality they often distort the truth and lead us into wrong choices, broken trust, and unnecessary stress. In difficult moments, the mind is even more likely to grab the fastest explanation rather than the correct one. That is why strengthening your thinking means challenging quick assumptions and replacing them with tested facts. Every assumption begins with incomplete information. Someone does not return your call, and you assume they are ignoring you. A coworker frowns during a meeting, and you assume they are unhappy with you. A plan runs into a delay, and you assume the entire project is doomed. None of these assumptions may be true, yet they shape how you feel and how you act. The danger is not just that assumptions are often wrong, but that once you accept them, your brain stops looking for the truth. You settle for the story you created instead of checking the evidence. The first step to challenging assumptions is awareness. You must notice when your mind is filling in gaps with guesses. Ask yourself, do I know this for certain, or am I assuming it? That simple question creates separation between fact and story. It reminds you that the thought in your head is only one possible version of reality, not guaranteed truth. Awareness is powerful because it stops assumptions from slipping past unnoticed. The second step is slowing down your reaction. Quick assumptions often trigger quick responses. You assume someone disrespected you, so you snap back in anger. You assume a task is too hard, so you give up before trying. If you rush to act on an assumption, you multiply the damage. By pausing before you react, you give yourself the chance to test your assumption. That pause is where logic can enter and emotions can settle. Once you create space, the next step is to gather evidence. Evidence is what separates a tested fact from a guess. If someone has not replied to your message, the fact is only that they have not replied yet. The assumption might be that they are ignoring you. Evidence gathering means asking what other explanations could there be. Maybe they are busy, maybe they lost their phone, maybe they are dealing with personal matters. By considering multiple possibilities, you weaken the grip of the assumption. Checking assumptions also requires communication. Many misunderstandings happen because people assume instead of asking. If you think someone is upset with you, do not stew in silence. Ask directly and kindly if something is wrong.
If you think a decision has already been made, confirm it with the person in charge. Direct communication often reveals that your assumption was inaccurate. Asking clarifies, assuming confuses. Another method is to practice writing down both the assumption and the tested fact. For example, the assumption is that my boss thinks I am incompetent. The tested fact is that my boss gave feedback on one project. Writing them side by side exposes the difference between what you believe and what you can prove. This practice trains the brain to spot exaggerations and separate them from reality. Challenging assumptions also means being willing to admit you were wrong. Pride makes people cling to assumptions, even when evidence proves otherwise. They would rather protect their ego than correct their thinking. But true strength comes from humility. When the facts show your assumption was false, accept it with honesty. This not only clears your mind, but also builds trust with others, because they see you value truth over stubbornness. There are many types of quick assumptions that damage judgment. One is assuming intention. You believe you know why someone acted a certain way, without checking. Another is assuming permanence. You think a failure today means you will always fail. There is also assuming universality. You treat one bad experience as proof that everything will go badly. Recognizing these patterns helps you stop them faster. The discipline of replacing assumptions with facts requires curiosity. Curiosity pushes you to ask questions instead of settling for guesses. Curiosity wants to explore possibilities, gather details, and test ideas. When you bring curiosity to a situation, assumptions lose power. Instead of saying this is how it is, you say let me see what is really going on. That small shift changes the entire outcome. Testing assumptions also means comparing them with real data. In your personal life, data can mean actual conversations, timelines, or behaviors you can observe. In work, it can mean numbers, records, and documented evidence. If the data supports your thought, then it becomes closer to fact. If the data contradicts your thought, then it is time to let go of the assumption. Facts are stronger than feelings when you have the courage to face them. One reason people hold on to assumptions is because it is easier than facing uncertainty. Not knowing is uncomfortable, so the mind fills the gap with a quick story. But uncertainty is not your enemy. It is better to admit I do not know yet than to pretend you know and be wrong. Living with temporary uncertainty keeps your thinking open. Rushing to fill the gap with assumptions closes it prematurely and blocks real understanding. A good habit is to delay judgment until more evidence appears. When you feel the urge to decide immediately, remind yourself that time will reveal more information. Not every question must be answered on the spot. Patience is a tool against assumptions. The longer you wait for clarity, the less likely you are to be trapped by a false story. Challenging assumptions also applies to the way you see yourself. Many people carry hidden assumptions about their own abilities. They assume they are not good enough, not smart enough, or not capable of change. These are not facts. They are old beliefs often built from fear or past experiences. The way to replace them is to test them with action. Try the task, learn the skill, take the step. The evidence you gather from real experience is more accurate than the assumptions you have carried for years. This practice is especially important in moments of conflict. Arguments escalate because people assume they know what the other person means or intends. They react not to facts, but to the story in their head. By pausing to ask questions and confirm details, conflicts often shrink instead of growing. Many broken relationships could be repaired if both sides stopped assuming and started checking. Replacing assumptions with facts also creates fairness. When you assume, you judge without evidence, which can harm others unjustly. But when you base your thinking on facts, you treat people with respect. You give them the benefit of truth, rather than the burden of your guesses. This fairness strengthens trust in every area of life. Daily practice makes this skill second nature. Start small. When you think I cannot do this, ask what proof do I have? When you think she must be angry, ask what evidence supports that. When you think this will never work, ask what facts show that is true. Each time you challenge an assumption, you train your brain to resist its old habits. Over time, your thinking becomes sharper, more accurate, and more reliable. Reflection helps too. At the end of the day, ask yourself, where did I assume instead of checking today? What facts did I overlook? What could I do differently next time? This reflection turns mistakes into growth and makes you more alert in the future. The reward for practicing this discipline is freed. Assumptions chain you to false beliefs and distorted thinking. Facts set you free to see clearly and act wisely. When you build the habit of questioning assumptions and demanding evidence, you gain power over your own mind. You stop being manipulated by guesses and start guiding your life with truth. Over time, people notice this in you. They see that you do not rush to judgment. They see that you are fair, balanced, and thoughtful. They begin to trust your perspective because it is grounded in facts, not quick stories. This reputation opens doors because people are drawn to those who think clearly. The ability to challenge assumptions also reduces unnecessary stress. Much of what people worry about never actually happens. They assume disaster, but the facts show stability. They assume rejection, but the facts show acceptance. By checking assumptions, you prevent your mind from creating problems that do not exist. You live lighter because you are no longer burdened by false fear. Imagine the strength of living this way. You face a challenge, but instead of reacting to your first thought, you pause. You ask, what is the evidence? You gather information. You speak directly to clarify. You replace the assumption with tested fact. Now your response is calm, smart, and effective. Problems shrink, relationships improve, decisions grow stronger. This is the power of disciplined thinking. Life is too important to be guided by guesses. Assumptions will always try to sneak in, but you can train your mind to catch them and test them. With practice, you move from assumption-driven living to fact-based living. That shift changes everything. It makes you wiser, steadier, and more capable in every area of life. When you learn to challenge quick assumptions and replace them with tested facts, you take ownership of your mind. You no longer settle for the easiest answer. You dig for the truth. You stop reacting blindly and start responding intelligent. And that skill, practiced every day, transforms not only how you think but also how you live.
Chapter 9. Build resilience by applying rational thinking after every failure. Failure has a way of shaking confidence and making the mind believe that everything is lost. The disappointment can be heavy and the emotions can push you to quit before trying again. Yet failure is never the end unless you allow it to be. The difference between those who rise and those who remain defeated lies in how they think after falling short. If you respond with emotional reactions only, failure becomes a weight that holds you down. But if you apply rational thinking after every setback, failure becomes a teacher that builds resilience and prepares you for greater success. The first key is to resist the temptation to define yourself by failure. Many people let one mistake convince them they are incapable. They say to themselves, "I failed, therefore I am a failure." That is emotion speaking, not truth. Rational thinking separates identity from outcome. You are not your mistakes. You are a person who made a mistake. That difference changes everything. Rational thinking reminds you that failure is an event, not a permanent label. After any setback, the emotions usually arrive first: frustration, embarrassment, sadness, even anger. These feelings are natural, but if you let them dominate, they distort judgment. Rational thinking means pausing long enough for emotions to cool so you can see clearly. Ask yourself, what exactly happened? What part of this is fact, and what part is my emotional reaction? That question creates a bridge from pain to perspective. Once perspective begins to return, the next step is analysis. Rational thinking treats failure as data. Every failure carries information about what did not work. Review the sequence of events. Identify where the process broke down. Ask what specific actions contributed to the result. Instead of saying it all went wrong, break it down into parts you can examine. This structured approach prevents despair from taking over and replaces it with curiosity. The next step is to ask what was within my control and what was not. Rational thinking draws a clear line between the two. If the weather ruined your outdoor event, that was not your control. But how well you prepared with alternatives, that was. If the market shifted unexpectedly, you could not change that. But how quickly you adapted, you could. Focusing on what you can influence builds strength. Dwelling on what you cannot influence only deepens discouragement. Rational thinking also asks, what can I learn from this experience? This question is the foundation of resilience. Every failure reveals gaps in skill, planning, awareness, or discipline. By identifying the gap, you create a roadmap for improvement. Without this step, failure remains wasted pain. With it, failure becomes an investment in growth. It is important to be specific. General statements like "I need to do better" are not enough. Rational thinking demands clarity. Instead ask, what skill do I need to improve? What habit must I change? What preparation did I miss? Specific answers turn vague disappointment into clear direction. This clarity turns failure into a stepping stone. Another part of resilience is reframing the meaning of failure. Instead of seeing it as proof of inadequacy, see it as evidence of effort. The person who never fails is the person who never tries. Failure shows you had the courage to take action. Rational thinking reminds you that effort is progress, even if the outcome was not what you wanted. Each attempt adds experience, and experience builds wisdom. Comparison is another trap after failure. Emotions make you look at others who seem to succeed easily and conclude you are behind. Rational thinking corrects this distortion. It reminds you that every person fails, though not everyone shows it. The story you see on the outside is never the full picture. Your path is unique, and your pace does not need to match anyone else's. Focus on your own lessons, not on comparing with others. Resilience also grows when you focus on evidence from your past. After failure, the mind often forgets previous successes. Rational thinking brings them back. Ask yourself, when have I succeeded before? What challenges have I already overcome? This evidence proves that failure is not permanent. It reminds you that you have strength, and that this setback is only one chapter, not the whole story. Another critical question is, what is the next step I can take? Rational thinking keeps the focus on forward movement. It does not get stuck in endless reflection. Once lessons are identified, action must follow. Even the smallest step forward rebuilds confidence. Resilience is not built by waiting for perfect circumstances. It is built by taking consistent action after setbacks. It is also important to guard against emotional exaggeration. After failure, emotions often say, "This is the end," or "I will never recover." Rational thinking asks, is that really true? What evidence supports that? Most of the time, the evidence shows the opposite, that recovery is possible and opportunities remain. By challenging emotional exaggerations, you stop fear from controlling your decisions. Resilience is also strengthened by building supportive routines. After failure, motivation can drop. Rational thinking says, keep showing up, maintain your daily habit, exercise, read, work, connect with people who uplift you. These routines anchor you when emotions fluctuate. They remind you that life continues and that you are still capable of discipline. Feedback is another tool for rational recovery. After a setback, ask for honest input from people you trust. What do they see that you missed?
What advice can they offer? Others often notice blind spots that you cannot see in the heat of disappointment. Feedback adds more data, and more data sharpens your next attempt. Rational thinking also means being patient with recovery. Failure does not instantly turn into growth. Lessons take time to apply. Confidence takes time to rebuild. Rational thinking accepts the process. It says, "This will take time, but each day I am moving forward." Patience itself is a form of resilience, because it prevents you from quitting too soon. Reflection is powerful after failure. Set aside time to write about what happened, what you felt, what you learned, and what you will do different. Writing slows down chaotic thoughts and organizes them into structure. It makes the lessons clear and prevents emotions from distorting memory. This practice turns failure into a written guide you can return to whenever you face new challenges. Another principle is to avoid labeling one failure as total failure. Rational thinking reminds you that failing in one area does not mean you are failing in life. You may have lost in business, but succeeded in building stronger relationships. You may have stumbled in one project, but succeeded in gaining new skills. Resilience grows when you see the full picture instead of defining yourself by a single event. Resilience also requires perspective. Rational thinking asks, how much will this matter in the long run? Often a failure feels huge in the moment, but smaller over time. By placing it in a larger timeline, you reduce its emotional weight. You realize that what feels like the end today may one day be only a small lesson on the journey. It is also vital to separate effort from outcome. Rational thinking says, sometimes you can do everything right and still not get the result you wanted. That does not mean your effort was wasted. It means external factors influence the outcome. Recognizing this keeps you from blaming yourself unfairly and encourages you to keep applying effort without fear of imperfection. Resilience grows each time you rise after falling. Rational thinking ensures that rising is not blind but informed. Each failure then becomes part of a process that strengthens you. You become less afraid of failing because you know how to learn from it. This freedom allows you to take more chances, try more ideas, and pursue bigger goals. Imagine approaching failure this way. Instead of sinking into despair, you pause, you examine the facts, you identify lessons. You separate what was in your control from what was not. You reframe the meaning, reminding yourself that effort is progress. You review your past strength and plan your next step. This process transforms failure into growth and discouragement into resilience. Over time, you become the kind of person who does not crumble under setbacks. Others notice your steadiness. They see that you can recover and even grow stronger after failure. They begin to trust your leadership and your perspective, because you demonstrate strength in adversity. That trust opens new opportunities, and resilience becomes a reputation that serves you in every area of life. Life guarantees failure at some point. No one escapes, but life also offers the chance to use each failure as training for resilience. When you respond with rational thinking instead of emotional collapse, you turn pain into preparation. You become wiser, stronger, and more capable. You build the confidence that no matter what comes, you can handle it. That is the true gift of applying rational thinking after failure. It is not just about fixing mistakes. It is about building a character that does not break under pressure. It is about becoming a person who sees setbacks as fuel for growth. It is about living with the calm assurance that failure is never the end, only part of the process. When you train yourself to think this way, resilience is no longer something you hope for. It becomes part of who you are.
Chapter 10. Commit to lifelong critical thinking for daily calm. Critical thinking is not something you use only when life is falling apart or when you are facing a major decision. It is a discipline, a daily practice that becomes part of who you are. The people who enjoy steady calm in the middle of chaos are not those who escape problems, but those who train themselves to think clearly and rationally every single day. Committing to lifelong critical thinking is about building a way of life that keeps you grounded, balanced, and steady, no matter what comes your way. Daily calm is not found by avoiding challenges. It comes from knowing that you can face any challenge with a clear mind. This confidence is built through habits that sharpen critical thinking. The commitment is not temporary. It is a lifelong choice to use reason, clarity, and truth as your guides. Each day offers opportunities to practice, and each day of practice strengthens your ability to stay calm. The first step in making critical thinking a lifelong habit is recognizing that clarity is not automatic. The human brain loves shortcuts. It jumps to conclusions, relies on biases, and reacts with emotion before examining facts. If you do not train your thinking, you live at the mercy of these shortcuts. Lifelong commitment means never assuming your mind is perfectly clear. It means checking your thoughts daily and making conscious choices instead of running on impulse. One way to practice daily is to question your first thought. The first thought is often emotional or based on habit. By asking yourself, is this accurate? Is this fair? Is this supported by evidence? You train your mind to slow down and look deeper. Over time, this questioning becomes automatic. Instead of rushing to judgment, you pause and evaluate. This pause alone creates calm because it stops you from reacting blindly. Another daily practice is reflection. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to review your thoughts and actions. Ask, where did I think clearly? Where did I let emotion control me? What could I have done better? Reflection sharpens awareness. It shows you where you are improving and where you need more discipline. With consistent reflection, you gradually replace weak thinking with strong thinking. Committing to lifelong critical thinking also means valuing evidence over assumption. This is a discipline you must apply constantly. When you hear news, ask, what is the source? When you feel upset, ask, what facts support my feeling? When you face a choice, ask, what proof do I have that this path is right? Daily calm comes from knowing that your decisions are based on reality, not on fears or rumors. Critical thinking also requires humility. You must be willing to admit when you do not know something. Many people destroy their calm by pretending they know it all. They rush to conclusions, speak with certainty, and then suffer when reality proves them wrong. Humility allows you to say, I need more information. It allows you to learn instead of defend. This openness not only strengthens your mind, but also reduces the pressure to always be right. Another part of lifelong commitment is building routines that reinforce calm. Start your mornings with questions that focus your thinking. What is most important today? What will I focus on? What potential challenges might come? And how will I handle them? These questions prepare your mind before the chaos begins. End your evenings with questions of learning. What did I gain today? What mistakes did I make? What will I improve tomorrow? These routines create structure, and structure builds steadiness. Daily calm is also supported by the way you handle emotions. Critical thinking does not mean ignoring feelings, but managing them with reason. Each time you feel anger, fear, or sadness, acknowledge it, then ask, what is the evidence? What is the most rational response? What action will serve me best? By guiding emotions with reason, you prevent them from controlling your behavior. Over time, this balance creates lasting calm. Another habit to practice is perspective. Problems feel overwhelming when you zoom in too close. Critical thinking reminds you to zoom out. Ask, how much will this matter in a year? What is the bigger picture? What opportunities might be hidden here? This shift in perspective reduces stress and helps you stay calm. It keeps you from being consumed by small problems and reminds you of what truly matters. Committing to lifelong critical thinking also means surrounding yourself with people who value truth and clarity. If you spend time with people who constantly assume, exaggerate, and react emotionally, their habits will influence you. Choose to learn from those who think deeply, ask good questions, and remain steady in challenges.
Their example will strengthen your own discipline. Lifelong commitment also requires continuous learning. Read books, study history, explore new ideas. Critical thinking sharpens when you feed your mind with knowledge. Exposure to different perspectives broadens your reasoning and protects you from narrow thinking. The more you learn, the more calm you feel, because knowledge gives you tools to understand and manage life. It is important to remember that critical thinking is not a rigid system. It is flexible and adaptable. Life will change, challenges will evolve, and you must be willing to adjust your methods. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Commitment means staying open and willing to refine your approach. This adaptability prevents frustration and keeps you steady in an uncertain world. Another aspect of daily critical thinking is asking better questions in every situation. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this? What can I do right now? What resources do I have?" The quality of your questions guides the quality of your reasoning. Better questions lead to better answers, and better answers bring calm. The discipline also extends to self-talk. Many people create unnecessary stress with negative inner dialogue. Critical thinking challenges this. When you hear yourself say, "I cannot do this," you test it. Is it true? What evidence says otherwise? What small step can I take? This process replaces destructive thoughts with rational ones, and rational thoughts build confidence. Confidence naturally produces calm. Committing to lifelong critical thinking also helps you deal with failure. Instead of collapsing under mistakes, you analyze them with reason. You separate what was under your control from what was not. You learn the lesson and plan the next step. This habit prevents fear of failure from dominating your life. You become more resilient because you know every setback can be examined, understood, and used for growth. Another area where critical thinking brings calm is in relationships. Misunderstandings often arise from assumptions and rushed judgment. Daily practice of asking for clarification, listening carefully, and checking facts reduces conflict. It creates fairness and trust. When people know you think carefully before reacting, they feel respected. This strengthens relationships and makes your interactions more peaceful. Critical thinking also helps manage external stress. News, opinions, and distractions flood daily life. Without discipline, these can overwhelm you. By practicing evaluation, you filter information. You ask, "Is this relevant? Is this accurate? Does this deserve my attention?" This filter protects your mind from being overloaded and keeps your focus on what matters. Making this a lifelong commitment requires consistency. It is not about perfection, but persistence. Some days you will react emotionally before thinking. Some days you will assume instead of checking. That is natural. What matters is returning to the discipline again and again. Over years, the habit grows strong, and your mind becomes trained to think clearly almost automatically. The ultimate reward of lifelong critical thinking is freedom. Freedom from being controlled by fear. Freedom from being manipulated by false stories. Freedom from confusion and chaos. You live with calm, not because life is easy, but because you have built the mental strength to face it with clarity. Each day becomes steadier because you know your thinking will guide you through. Imagine living with this discipline fully in place. A problem arises, but you do not panic. You pause, evaluate, gather facts, and respond with reason. A setback comes, but you do not collapse. You reflect, learn, and take the next step. Stress builds, but you stay calm because your habits anchor you. People around you notice your steadiness and trust you more. Opportunities open because you are seen as a person of clarity and calm. This way of living is possible for anyone willing to commit, It does not require special talent. It requires daily practice, questioning assumptions, testing evidence, reflecting on actions, guiding emotions with reason, asking better questions, and staying open to learning. These are simple steps, but over time they create extraordinary strength. When you commit to lifelong critical thinking, you are not just sharpening your mind, you are shaping your life. You become someone who can remain calm in storms, clear in confusion, and steady under pressure. That kind of person does not just survive life's challenges, they thrive. They inspire others by their example. This is the gift of daily calm that comes from critical thinking. It is not given to you. It is built by you. Each day of practice adds strength. Each challenge becomes training, and each reflection builds wisdom. Make the choice to commit not for a week, not for a year, but for a year, but for life. And you will find that no matter what happens around you, the calm within you remains unshaken.